The little... Oh, that's credits. We did it. We did it. All right. I'm gonna have to cover this, but that's okay. All right, cool. First things first. The bottom center of the screen says that we've beaten 45 games in 2024 and 492 since we started doing this in 2020. Those numbers are now lies. We've now beaten 46 games in 2024 and 493 since we started doing this in 2020. Let's go. All right, let's talk about the pros and cons of Crow Country. Overall, I think this is a very good game. When it comes to the survival horror staples, it does, like, the resource management is very satisfying. The inventory management is very satisfying. The puzzles were... Some of them were pretty tricky. In fact, some of them were really tricky. But most of them weren't too hard, like to a degree that they weren't like I needed to use a walkthrough. And B, there was a hint system in the game that I thought was really cool, that you could just go and buy a hint, but you only had a certain number for the whole game. That's a cool way of giving you a way to avoid using a walkthrough and get extra hints, but also keep a sense of, you know, a sense of its own kind of resource management, because you didn't want to use all those up, you know. So it still gave like a sense of, like, you know, if you mess it up, if you use too many, you could still find yourself in a bad spot. So I liked that. I liked that hint system. That was cool. The story was very intriguing. And as the game goes on, it gets crazier and crazier for sure. And there were some twists toward the end that I did not see coming at all. There's still some things that weren't fully explained, but that's okay. So I thought that the story... At first, I didn't think much of the story, but as the story went on, it got more and more interesting. So I liked that. I think that's probably mostly it for, like, the pros. But yeah, like, to put a cap on that, the survival horror basics, like the basics of the genre, inventory management, resource management, puzzles, level design, all that stuff was good. It was very good, I thought. The art style is very interesting and cool. I will say that it's a little muddy, so it is very hard to... it's very easy to miss items on the ground and things like that. Things tend to blend in together. And there are a lot of environmental traps and stuff that are very, very easy to just walk right into. So I didn't love that. The pixel art style makes things a little bit muddy. I like the art style, but there's a byproduct of it that I didn't love so much, where you could just walk into traps or walk right past ammo or things like that. It was very easy to do that. So the art style I liked, but it did cause some problems. Oh, the other thing about the art style, the viewpoint made it really easy to miss just full doorways. This is more of a UI complaint, but the map doesn't. It shows you what room you're in on the map, and it also did a lot of cool stuff, like show you what puzzle, like if there's puzzles that still need to be solved, stuff like that. That was great, but it wouldn't show you where you were in the room. So when you would walk into a room, it was very easy to misunderstand where in the room you were, and therefore what door on the left had been opened and what hadn't. And I would just miss full rooms because of that. And once I found out that the rooms label themselves once you walk into them, I realized that there were multiple rooms that I had just completely missed. And that actually caused me a lot of problems early in the game, because I did things in a weird order. It was fine, but it ended up with some wasted time on my end. So just, I wish that there had been a way that, like, I wish it would just show you, like when you were in a room, it would just put your face in the center, the icon that showed you were in the room, it would just put it right in the middle of the room. It wouldn't say where in the room you were. That would be really helpful. So that was a little bit of an issue. The combat in this game is rough, but I think it's supposed to be. It's very tank controls, Resident Evil style, original Resident Evil style. It gives you a laser pointer once you unlock it, and it gives you a reticle, so you can see what you're aiming at, but it's still, like, with the angle and everything, it is very easy to shoot over things' heads, shoot by under things, around things. But I think that's designed. I think that's a feature rather than a bug. So I found it to be frustrating, but I think that's deliberate. So I don't want to critique that too hard. Other than that, I think the only other thing, and again, I think this is more of a feature than a bug, there is a certain point in this game where it becomes significantly more difficult. About halfway through, it goes from being pretty easy to suddenly being very easy to, like, get into trouble. I wouldn't say it's easy to die. I mean, I only died one time in the whole game, but that's because this game has the save system of these old survival horror games. So if you die, you lose all your progress up to the last point in time you saved. So A, that meant I was saving way more than I really needed to, and B, I was being very, very, very careful. I would heal sometimes, even if I didn't really need to. I would spend ammo on things that maybe I didn't really need to. I was trying to hoard as best as I could, but at a certain point I was a little worried because my health and ammo were starting to run out really quickly, because at a certain point the game just gets way harder. There's a point that happens in the what it reminded me of is the point in the original Resident Evil when the hunters start showing up. Because you go through the mansion and there's zombies and whatever, it's not that bad. But then when you come back into the house, suddenly there's hunters everywhere, and the game immediately gets way, way, way harder. There's a point in this game where that happens, something like that happens, and it just gets way harder. That's okay, but I found it to be a little bit frustrating because some of the environmental traps and stuff, like I said, that the art design is very muddy, so it's very easy to just walk into those traps, even if you know what they look like. I don't know if being colorblind made that any worse. It might have, but either way, I thought that was a little tricky. But honestly, overall, I thought this game was very good. How long to beat time says 4 hours. It took me like 6, but I did, I made some mistakes or whatever. But I think 6 hours is, honestly, there's a lot of older survival horror games that take about that long. Like, this game felt like a full survival horror game to me. When I saw the 4 hours how long to beat time, I was like, oh, well, this will be a really short affair that I can blow through in a single day. That ended up not being the case. This was a 2-day game for me because it took me more like 6 hours. And so I wouldn't be put off by the how long to beat time. Like, it didn't feel like it was an abridged experience. It felt like a full experience. Yeah, I really liked it. I think there was a couple of minor issues with the UI. The combat, again, was hard to deal with, but I think it was supposed to be. I think, overall, I thought this was a very, very good game. I don't know where I'm going to rank a game like this, but, I brought this up while I was playing. The only thing that this game is really missing, and maybe this is my only real critique, it's not scary. This is a survival horror game that does all the basics pretty well, except the horror part. It's not really a scary game. It's unsettling at times, and there's a couple of things that, like, little jump scares or whatever that got me a little bit, but the game isn't really that scary. It's kind of whimsical and tongue-in-cheek and kind of goofy looking, and I think that's on purpose. I think that's, again, by design. But at the end of the day, if I'm looking at something like this against something like Signalis, which is another game that came out recently that's a throwback survival horror game that is terrifying, that also does all the other survival horror stuff great, when I think about where I'm going to rank a game, I'm probably going to put a game like Signalis over this, because they have a lot of the same things going for them. But Signalis is a lot scarier. So that's just something I'm going to take into account. If you have a survival horror game that has all the pieces except for the horror, that's still a good game. And there's a lot of games like that, by the way. But But, you know, it would have been better if it had been scarier. That's all I'll say, you know. But again, I think that's all by design. But it could have been a little bit scarier, I guess is all I'm saying. All right, that's it, though. We did it. And I thoroughly enjoyed this game. I love a good throwback survival horror game. That's almost as good as it gets for me for gaming. It's one of my favorite genres, period. But we're done. And Crow Country, it's been fun, but it is now time to delete you from our... Oh, shit, I hit the wrong button. It's now time. Last order of business, Crow Country. It's been fun, but we're now going to delete you from our console and never play you again. Bye. Thank you. Appreciate ya. See you later.